But at the end of the day, if you want those jobs that most people aren't getting, you need to do things that most people aren't doing.
Hey everyone, I'm in New York right now. I'm gonna interview someone you probably know if you've been looking for job search online, especially on LinkedIn. Tell me if this situation is familiar. You have a dream company or a dream job, but you lack the experience that the job posting is asking for. You don't have 10 years of experience. You don't have all those skills listed. You don't have all these projects. But you know that if they gave you just one chance, you know that you'll do an awesome job. So what do you do in that case? Today we're gonna interview Austin Belcak, who went from the medical industry to manager at Microsoft in Times Square, New York, without any management experience. And better, he didn't know anyone at Microsoft. He just landed a referral using a specific strategy that he'll teach us today and that he teaches on his blog, Cultivated Culture. So if you want to know how to land a referral at your dream company right now at the end of this video, well, keep on watching, because we're gonna go interview him in Times Square, New York at his office. But just before, let's grab some coffee, right? We'll need it. Hey Austin.
What's up, man? How's it going?
How are you?
Good. Good to see you. Yeah.
So Austin, thank you so much for being on my YouTube channel.
Thanks for having me, Monty. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So you always tell us that referral are key for to get like an awesome job. So why not just apply online?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a whole bunch of reasons, but really what it comes down to are your chances when you are applying online. So the reality is, when a job is posted today, the average role out there gets anywhere from 300 to 350 applications, which is crazy, right?
Okay, for one position.
For one position, okay. But not only that, you know, that's an average, right? So Google last year, they got 50,000 resumes every single week, which is like mind-boggling,
Oh
right?
my God, okay.
And that includes Google, but it also includes, you know, the bodega across the street here as well. And so that's an average. And as we go up in company caliber, the competition increases as well, because people want to work for those brand names, those bigger companies.
Yeah.
So actually, if you're going for one of these larger companies, one of these highly sought after companies, your chances are even lower. And so what happens is the applicant tracking system screens out the vast majority of resumes until there are about 20 or so left. And then a recruiter actually looks at it. So a human being is only reading a small percentage of these resumes. I
see.
And then finally, they pick 4 to 6 candidates to come in and interview, because they only have so much time to interview candidates, right? So 350 applications, 4 to 6 come in for an interview. That's less than a 2% chance of scoring the interview when you apply online. And that's even if you have traditional credentials. So for me, I was a biology major. I had a 2.58 GPA. I was not the best student. And I was trying to make this transition from healthcare, where I had a job, into tech, into Microsoft, where we're at now. And that is not easy to do when you're coming from a non-traditional background, right? If you have traditional credentials, that's the 2% we're talking about. But if you're coming from a non-traditional background, your chances are even lower, because that 2% that's getting in the door, those are people that check all the boxes. They read the job description, they're like, I'm qualified for this.
Most people read a job description and then they say, okay, I don't have 10 years of experience. Okay, I don't have that skill. I don't have that project under my belt. So what's the solution then?
Exactly. So the solution is kind of twofold. You mentioned referrals, and that's the first part of it. So the job search process or system that I recommend, that I personally use to get my job here, and offers at Google and Twitter and a couple other places, is really centered around first finding and building relationships with people who can influence your ability to get hired. So I'm not necessarily talking about recruiters or people in HR here, because while they can get you in the door, that's sort of where their influence ends. They can't be in the room where the hiring decision is made.
I see. Okay.
And then on top of that, there's also a lot of noise there, right? Because people see like, oh, you're a recruiter at this company, let me send you an email. But hundreds of people have that thought. So they get hundreds and hundreds of emails. So there's a lot of noise that you have to cut through, and the return isn't that high. But if you focused on somebody who could actually be in the room where the hiring decision was made, maybe the person who'd be managing you if you were hired, or would be sitting at the desk next to you, your peer or colleague, that person can not only refer you in for the job, but then they can also advocate for you throughout the interview process. They can be in the room where the hiring decision is being made and say, you know, I've had conversations with Madi. He is fantastic. He knows what he's doing. I know we have a lot of great candidates, but he is our guy. And that's really, really powerful. So that's one phase. And then the second is what I call a value validation project, which is essentially a deliverable that you put together that illustrates your value and kind of shows that you can do this role. So for me, I think one of the big issues with the hiring process right now is that resumes, they're just not great barometers of our capabilities, right?
Yeah, you can't like show off all your projects or all your experience like on a piece of paper, like on one page.
Exactly, black and white ink, 8.5 by 11, like that doesn't encapsulate our personality or what we're capable of. So creating a value validation project essentially allows you to sell yourself and your value, one, in a way that's focused on the company, because when we think about sales, great salespeople, they don't focus on themselves or the product, they focus on the person they're selling to, right? And so that is what we do with the project. We say, hey, I've done research on your company. I know where you want to go in the next 3 to 6 months. I know what's important to you. I know what your challenges are. Here's how I plug into that. Here are a few ideas. We're focusing it on them instead of saying, here's everything that I've done in the past, and I'm leaving it up to you to understand how that's going to fit in. So that's one piece. And then we can also do that in a medium using language that we're comfortable with. So if you combine those two things, if you combined getting out there and building relationships, reaching out to people who can potentially influence your ability to get hired, and we also combine this idea of a value validation project to showcase our value, that is really what's going to help you circumvent the online application process and get through the door no matter what your background looks like.
Okay, I see. So let's talk about the first part.
Yeah.
You said that we should build a relationship with people, but let's say I don't know anyone working at Amazon or at Google, for example. What's the first step I should do?
There's a couple of things that you can do. One, since we have this blank canvas, since we're building relationships with anyone, that's actually a positive in the sense that we don't have to hope that we find the right person. We can actually go after the right person. So that's huge. Then second, when we reach out, I think a big mistake that people make is they use what I call like a me mindset. And that's essentially when you reach out and you say, hey, I want a job at your company. Can you help me? Or here's my resume. Or can you refer me? It's all about you and what you want, right? But people don't necessarily respond well to that. Whereas if I do some research about the other person and I make the email about them, that is really what's going to drive that response. So I look through their LinkedIn profile, I Google their name, I look for something that I can latch onto, and it wouldn't be a video in New York without some sirens. But I try to find something. So if you're emailing me, you might see that I went from the healthcare space into tech. So I may say, hey, Austin, you know, I was looking through LinkedIn for people who made the jump into tech from a non-traditional background. Your experience going from the healthcare space to Microsoft was really impressive. You know, I'd love to learn more about your journey, talk through some of the obstacles you faced, ask you a few questions. And now I've sort of flipped that on its head. Like, while I may still want to work at that company, now I've made it about the person I'm emailing. And that tends to get much better response rates. So once you start there and you start thinking about the other person's interest and what they care about and what they want to hear, that's the best building block. What I recommend is people put together a list of 10 to 15 companies. Okay. And that's very different than applying to 10 companies every single day or 100 companies every week or whatever it is. These 10 or 15 are the ones we're really, really going to go after. So we start with that target list, and I sort of think about it like applying for college. You can have some stretch companies, you can have like some middle of the roads, and maybe you have some safeties that are, maybe lower on your priority list or whatever. But you start with those 10 or 15 companies, and then you go and you find 10 or 15 people at each of those companies. And so that's going to end up being about 150 people at the end of the day. And then it's all about having that conversation and asking them, what's the biggest challenge your team is facing? What initiatives are you working on over the next 6 to 12 months? And then using that plus research you've done on the company, specifically, the target area that you're focused on ahead of time, you combine that and you come up with that value validation project and you bring it back to them.
That's interesting, but let's say I'm a new grad. I have, 6 months of experience.
Sure.
Is it still possible for me to build a really good value validation project like that and then impress them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually posted a value about this on LinkedIn today, but I was just coaching a new grad, and she wanted a job at a Fortune 100 tech company, and we actually got her in the door with a 6-figure salary. And the way that she did that was exactly what we just talked about. So she went and she found contacts at this company, and she did a ton of research on everything going on there. You know, how are they doing? Are they doing well currently? Are they not doing well? Again, initiatives over the next 6 to 12 months, goals, challenges, all this stuff. She did crazy research. Then she went out and talked to people there. She actually went out and talked to their customers too. She surveyed their customers, and she packaged that all up into 3 very specific ideas for how they could grow market share for one of their new products that they launched. She packaged it up into a deck. She kind of matched the branding, so she had the same colors, she had the same fonts. She added links to her resumes and everything, and she sent that out to all the people that she talked to. They brought her in for an interview. She ended up getting the offer, and her comp package is crazy, and that's what's possible. So it really all comes down to the research that you do and your ability to identify in areas where you can add value and add that value. And it doesn't have to be a solution even. It can be simply like, here's an idea, or here's how the things that I've done in the past plug into where you're going, because I've done the research, I know where you're going, here's how I plug in.
Also, just one last question. I know that you wrote a blog post about like real value validation projects. Yeah. Can you tell us about like one that was really impressive from your perspective?
Yeah, for sure. So the one I just mentioned was one of the better ones I've seen. Another one was from somebody else that I coached, and she was looking for a job at a company called Away Luggage. So this person that I was coaching went out and she called up 20 people who were in their target demographic. Millennials, they work in specific industries. She kind of did a whole marketing persona on who their demographic would be. She called up 20 people who fit that demographic, and she asked them about their travels. What drives you up the wall? What are your pet peeves? What do you wish more companies did? Do you have a credit card? Are you loyal to programs? She collected all this info, and then she went online and she did a whole bunch of research on data that was out there. And then she put together a deck, and she basically said, here are 3 ways to drive more customer loyalty. Okay. One of them was the fact that when you travel, you have 6 different apps to manage your travel, right? You have, your Delta app for the boarding pass. You have your Lyft app to get you to the airport. You have, if you want to check the weather, you need the weather app. You have Booking.com. You have the whole thing. What if they combine that into one single app? So now she's coming up with these ideas of like, hey, you're all about improving the customer experience when they travel. Here are 3 ways to do that. She's basically showing them the ideas that she would bring to the table if she got hired. And that's exactly what we're going for with the VVP.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's all about like how much you care about the company, and that you show that you've done your research and that you really care about the role. You're not like everyone else who just applied and then they just want a job. You really want that job. Yeah. So yeah, that's the difference, I think.
So if I could have people just take one thing away from this video, I would say that if you want something that you've never had, but also something that most other people don't have, you have to do things that you've never done and what most other people aren't doing. So if you're a new grad, for example, the playing field is very flat. You're competing on GPA, you're competing on major, you're competing on the classes that you took. Internships, exactly. But for the most part, the internships are a couple months of experience here and there, and it's not the same as somebody who has 10 years of professional experience post-grad. So the playing field is flat, which is actually a good thing for you because everybody else is competing on the same stuff, right? They're applying online, they're tweaking their cover letters and their resumes, and so because of that, it's actually that much easier for you to stand out if you're willing to do a little bit more. But at the end of the day, if you want those jobs that most people aren't getting, you need to do things that most people aren't doing. And that's exactly what we've talked about this whole time. That's reaching out and building relationships. That's investing some extra hours to build the value validation project and to do the research. But at the end of the day, if you are applying and you're just applying online, you're just doing what everybody else is doing, you can't expect better results.
So awesome. Thanks so much, Austin, for all these tips. I learned a lot in this video, so I hope you learned a lot as well. How can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place is on my website. So it's cultivatedculture.com. I'm actually putting together a bunch of free tools for job seekers. There's a lot of free tools out there for entrepreneurs and all these other people, but there aren't so many for job seekers. So I put together a free resume builder. It's at cultivatedculture.com/resume. I also put together a tool called Mail Mailscoop. So if you go to mailscoop.io, we talked about finding email addresses earlier. Mailscoop just lets you plug in people's first and last names and their company link.
I just have to say something. It's totally free.
Yes.
Because I used like other services, and you have like, I don't know, like 20
credits and stuff,
20 credits or like 50 credits. You have unlimited credits with this one. So
yes,
it's awesome.
That's why I made it, exactly. So Mailscoop's totally free. The resume builder's totally free. You can, all the templates are applicant tracking system approved, recruiter approved, and you can download or create as many as you want. And then on top of that, anybody listening can reach out to me. My email is austin@cultivatedculture.com. I can't be the person who tells you to cold email and not respond.
That's cool.
And then finally, LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there, as you know, and hopefully we'll see Madi there this coming year. But any of those places are great options. And thank you guys so much. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks to you. I'll put everything we just talked about in the description so you can have a look if you want to. So again, thanks so much, Austin.
You got it, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ciao.
Take care.